Hello, good evening. My name is Malik Abazdab. Welcome to PM Express. It's a routine drudgery, but one he takes rather calmly. I'm talking about Finance Minister Seth Terkper. Mr. Terkper was in Parliament today to present the government's 2016 financial statement, i.e. the budget. As far as he is concerned, this is a budget that will consolidate progress that has been made, and in the hope that this will lead us into a brighter medium term. The minority disagree. For them, this is an example of one more monumental failure and a demonstration of government's inability to transform Ghana's economy. Tonight on PM Express, we dissect the issues, answer the questions, and know on the arcane details of the 2016 budget. Stay tuned. You are welcome back. Tonight we are discussing the budget. And with me is a colleague of mine on Joy Business who knows all the figures. He understands these things better than anyone else. Before I go to him though, I want us to pick an insert of what the Finance Minister Seth Terkper told Parliament when he appeared before Parliament today.
The disruption in gas supply and low levels of water in the Bui, Akosomo, and Pond dams due to climate change continue to pose significant power supply challenges, and a reduction in the capacity, a reduction in generation capacity, as well as recurring power outages. However, it is now clear that investments being made in the sector are rapidly changing the situation. The recommended overall budget deficit target of 5.3% of GDP under the IMF program provides a tighter fiscal space than anticipated in the original program, which had a 5.8%. It is against this background that we must even be more prudent in 2016 and avoid consequential cycle of huge election year budget overruns and deficits. The recent setbacks from commodity price shocks did not make us reverse course on our consolidation path, even as it reminded us of our vulnerability in transitioning to a middle-income country status. Mr. Speaker, finally, we are returning to another growth path, and our fiscal performance so far clearly shows that we can plan to manage and reverse periodic setbacks and take account of opportunities at the same time, even as they occur. In so doing, however, not even the successful first and second reviews under the IMF program and resultant renewal of confidence in the economy will make us complacent. First, there are clear signs that our consolidation efforts are yielding positive results, making the economy more efficient. Accordingly, the Ghana Statistical Service estimates that GDP will grow at 4.1% at the end of 2015 compared to the 3.5% initially projected. The World Bank, IMF, and others estimate future growth above 7%. As a result of good revenue performance, including GRA's compliance efforts, containment of overruns in the wage bill and other spending, as well as withdrawal of energy-related subsidy, except those funded through the cross-subsidy system, our fiscal consolidation program is on course, with a deficit set to be on target at 7.3%. Mr. Speaker, for the first time in many years, the domestic primary balance in the first half of 2015 achieved a surplus equivalent to 2.8% of GDP, whilst the budget deficit was down to 2.3% of GDP, at the same level as attained a decade ago. The current account deficit as a percentage of this GDP has stabilized whilst the foreign reserve position is significantly improving. Mr. Speaker, in the energy sector, we are bringing on stream 845 megawatts of power to add to the generation capacity by the close of the year. And we are providing the necessary investments and guarantees to permanently address our power generation shortfall and return the country to a net exporter of power position. Mr. Speaker, these investments have not only provided critical social services to improve the lives of our people, they have resulted in the creation of tens of thousands of jobs for the youth and our professional class. Mr. Speaker, at various stages of the doomsday crisis, the perception and notion was that government did not have a plan to tackle the power challenges. These major capital investments, which I just outlined, show clearly that government has not been aloof to the problem. To an extent, we appreciate the impatience shown at various times due mainly to the loss of productivity. However, it is also important to note that these are complex projects that require delicate designs to avoid flaws and major risks, such as occurred with the West Africa gas pipeline. Government will continue to pursue its objective of increasing the installed generating capacity of the country to meet the growing demand for electricity. A total of 1,053 megawatts of installed capacity is scheduled to be added to the existing capacity under these programs. In recent months, oil prices have declined significantly on account of strong supply from U.S. gas output and from members of the OPEC countries. Crude oil prices reached $59.82 per barrel in June 2015 and then fell to 42.5% US dollars per barrel in September 2015. Both prices are lower than our annual benchmark revenue projection of $99.38 per barrel for 2015. Cocoa prices rose in the second half of 2015, partly as a result of weather-related supply shortfalls in Ghana, but demand remains strong. The market is projected to register a small surplus in the 2015-16 season. Gold prices are generally expected to trend downwards, peaking around $1,160 per ounce in 2016, as the Federal Open Market Committee normalizes U.S. monetary policy. Mr. Speaker, on the review of tax exemptions, Mr. Speaker, government is continuously reviewing the tax exemption regime in the country to create the appropriate fiscal space for development. We will do this without jeopardizing the need for investment incentives in the country. However, Mr. Speaker, various studies have been conducted to estimate the quantum of Ghana's tax expenditure over 8 years, 2008 to 2015. A report by Ministry of Finance and a GRA revenue estimation team with support from development partners show that average tax expenditure to GDP ratio is now above 2%. The tax expenditure to GDP ratio for 2013 to 15 are 1.68% and 1.82% as well as 1.98% respectively. The 2016 budget is about following through the transformational agenda of the government with strategic action. Having assessed the global and domestic challenges facing our economy, we have explored the opportunities and taken bold steps at bracing the storm. In 2016, we will be seeking another mandate as a government as Mr. Speaker, as fate will have it, I have had the singular honor of presenting budgets to this House on every occasion that the Blast House is playing. Mr. Speaker, therefore, on behalf of His Excellency the President and on behalf of this august House, permit me, Mr. Speaker, to wish our gallant Black Stars victory. Mr. Speaker, I so move.
Yeah, welcome back. You just watched the finance minister Setepe in a rather cacophonous parliament. Tonight on PM Express, we are dissecting the government's 2016 budget statement. We are expecting economist John Gachi to join this discussion. But until then, I have with me John Amwaku, my own colleague on Joy Business. John, you're welcome.
Thank you very much.
I imagine you followed every single minute of the budget presentation today. What was unique for you about this particular budget?
Well, as usual, a budget is a budget. And what really caught my attention this time was kind of the seriousness with which the minister actually underlined some numbers. That is one. You know, to actually kick this whole discussion started, let me actually read this as a prelude to almost everything.
Are you reading?
This is an IMF press statement issued or released this year.
Why is it relevant?
It is relevant because IMF predicted what the situation would be. Ghana also understood the situation, and we decided to actually join them. Before we did that, this is what IMF had to say before we did that.
Am I hearing you say this budget was built around what the IMF said?
Basically, not necessarily because IMF said so, but because we also saw the need for that. You know, we are Senchi before IMF came in. Okay, Senchi actually gave us a lot of indications to the effect that we are not managing the economy right. If you are even managing it right, we are managing towards a ditch in a way, because our debt to GDP ratio was rising. There were inflation actually going up. The city not doing so well. Okay, so at a point in time,
interest rates spiraling out of control.
Exactly. So these were some of the indicators which were not really good for our country at that time. So even the leadership of our country itself saw the need to adjust and readjust. Okay, so after Senchi, then IMF came in, said, okay, fine, then this is what we actually want to do. Okay, then why don't we join these two documents to actually see the way forward clearer?
Let's take what
so exactly so. So this is a press conference actually released by the press release by the IMF. Let me actually, if you permit me to read this. It says Ghana experienced 3 difficult years characterized by declining economic growth, increasing inflation rates, rising debt levels, and financial vulnerabilities. In 2014, economic growth reached its lowest level in many years, with non-oil GDP growing at 4.1%. In the context of high interest rates, a fast depreciating currency, low aggregate demand, and a deepening energy crisis. Inflation reached 17%, well above the central bank's inflation target. Large fiscal deficit caused by a ballooning wage bill, poorly targeted energy subsidies, and commodity price shocks pushed government debt and financing costs to very high levels and made the economy more vulnerable to rollover risk. Despite the implementation of corrective measures in the last couple of years, these domestic imbalances resulted in a weakened external position and pressures on the exchange rate, with the net international reserve covering just a few days of import coverage in September 2014 before rebounding on the account of issuance of a Eurobond and a syndicated loan obtained by the Ghana Cocoa Board. This is IMF 2015.
This is a summary of our economic problems.
If you really would want to understand the background, the basis to this particular budget today and the way forward, you need to get this particular statement.
This paragraph in the IMF
This simple paragraph actually summarizes the entire work of the minister in Parliament today. Okay, this is what anchors the budget today. So what it means is that under the circumstance, it is imperative to actually have a paradigm which actually will not follow the status quo as we've seen previous years, but rather a new shift, a shift towards what we call austerity of fiscal disciplinary regimes. Okay, times are fast gone when we would see 7, 8, 9% growth rate. No, those times are no more. Okay. Now what we're actually going through is that we should see some contraction in the short to medium term. We're not going to see that much significant growth. No. All we need to do is to rebalance our economy by getting the debt to GDP ratios to a sustainable level before we can actually think of even growing on top of it. Otherwise, that would be a disaster.
Let's see how Finance Minister Setekpe proposes to deal with these matters in the budget today. Let's pick the issues one after another, and you have laid them out. We know about declining growth, and you spoke about it, fast depreciating currency, ballooning wage bill, increasing interest rate, and so those important matters. Let's pick those headline ones and deal with them. How did the finance minister propose, and government generally, to deal with these matters?
Before I even come to that, let's look at this. Budget is simply revenue and expenditure. That goes with it. Okay. Number one, the minister, I think this time around, was very realistic this afternoon or this morning to indicate that, one, gold prices, which has been one of the backbones of our revenue, it's not going to be as we used to have it. Okay, he pegged, or he sort of like projected the outlook of gold to somewhere around $111 per ounce,
which is a conservative estimate.
Very conservative estimate, which I do agree with him. Okay,
why?
He pegged because now the international market is actually not stable. Even global GDP is actually contracting. China is not buying as they used to. The US is having its own problems. Okay, so demand for gold and these exports, or let me say traditional export for Ghana, is not as it used to be again. So it's only normal and natural as a country when planning to factor all these things into it. Otherwise,
so our backbone has been removed.
It's not been removed, but it's not as dependent.
Been weakened.
Exactly, has been weakened. Gold is one. Crude oil, whether as a net importer or an exporter, we have difficulties in there. We have challenges in there. As an exporter of crude, how much are we actually producing in the first place? And this year alone, crude has seen almost about 50% decline in value.
But
that is very significant to inform the minister not to rely on the data he did last year.
John, let's stay with the crude oil.
Exactly, okay.
We know that we export crude oil. So if the prices of crude falls, which means we are not earning less from the oil that we export, but we are paying less for the oil that we import. Exactly. Because whilst we export some, we import some for domestic consumption. And if we are earning less by way of exporting, we are paying less by way of importing. It balances out, doesn't it?
It doesn't. No, that is a totally different argument altogether. Okay.
How?
Because if you look at the total of oil crude we import as compared to that we export, the net is it's negative totally. That meaning we import more than we export. So in the event prices go up, our import bills also move up. Okay. In the event prices go down, we pay less for importing, but also receive less. But the point is, we don't import crude. We import refined products.
Yes,
okay.
We know that because
which is more expensive.
We have refused to let toll work.
Exactly.
So we have to import refined products.
Exactly, which is more expensive than the crude by all standards. Okay, which is more expensive. So we essentially are a net importer of oil.
Refined oil.
Refined oil. That is a fact. So what I liked about this is that the minister was fair, was frank, was objective to himself and this country, and honest to this country, to have stated that. Okay? That is a fact.
But to be fair, he didn't have a choice, did he? Because the reality is that the figures are pretty bad. So he couldn't have said anything other than what he said.
Exactly so. Exactly so. So that also noted. Look at cocoa. In terms of volumes, Ghana's cocoa has been declining. We are only saved by the fact that weather conditions and rainfall patterns have changed, such that globally, let's say Ghana and Ivory Coast, totally supplies the global demand for cocoa, about 50% of it. But luckily enough, these two countries aren't doing well, but Ghana is getting worse by the day in terms of volumes exported.
And that is blamable on us, isn't it?
It is.
But I want us to explore that bit. I want us to take a break. When we come back, we'll explore a bit about why our produce in cocoa is declining, the things that we have done that has brought us this far, and how that is having an impact on the economy. You're watching PM Express. Stay tuned. Welcome back. We are talking budget with my colleague, John Amwako. John, before we went on the break, you were talking about the prices of cocoa, the prices of gold, price of crude oil, and how all of these have fallen on the international market. And my question to you is, why should I be worried? Why should the Ghanaian be concerned that these prices have fallen? And how does Setekwe, the finance minister, plan to deal with this if it poses a problem? But before you come in, I want us to pick the minority. You know, anytime the budget is presented, the minority will tell their view of the budget. Dr. Osei Asare spoke, and he is a member of the NPP. He was a finance minister under the Kufuor government. Let's listen to what Osei Asare had to say about today's budget presentation. That's the 2016 budget.
The 2016 budget for us is called the dead goat budget. The 2016 budget is the 9th budget of the NDC government since its assumption of office in 2009. Ghanaians were promised a better agenda in 2008. But going into the 8th year of government in 2016, this government has delivered one of the worst economic performances of any government in Ghana's history. The record after the last 7 budgets of the NDC is definitely not one of a better Ghana than the one this government, as you all know, inherited in 2009. Rather, it is a record of monumental waste of an historic opportunity to transform the economy of Ghana and improve the lives of Ghanaians. In fact, no government in the history of Ghana has had the amount of resources in terms of tax revenue, cocoa exports, gold exports, oil revenues, and loans, and I repeat loans, as this NDC government. The financial resources that have been available to this government are actually mind-boggling. The 2016 budget, the debt growth budget, is no different from the other 7 budgets of this government. Full of rosy promises, but it ends up breaking those promises and imposes hardships on Ghanaians. In this regard, the 2016 budget is no different from the 2012 election year budget. The government, we predict, will certainly not abide by the targets set by the IMF program in this budget. Those targets will be reached for sure, as the government will inevitably succumb to election pressures. It is not a credible budget. We should rather focus on the NDC record of failure to get a sense of what will happen in 2016. Unfortunately, it is a 7-year record of failure. What they've done, ladies and gentlemen, is the following. They've given us a Dumsor economy, a Wyoming economy, a Jida economy, a Sada economy, a judgment debt economy, a Wahala economy, an economy where if you want to get paid, you have to go on strikes, propaganda economy, a hippie economy, an economy where cocoa spraying depends on which party affiliation.
You're welcome back. You just heard Dr. Osei Asare. He's a member of Parliament for Tafu, Old Tafu. And he spoke eloquently to the MPP's position on the budget. John, before we went on the break, I was asking you about all of these things. It appears the minority is oblivious of the things that you were pointing out. The fall in cocoa prices, fall in gold prices, fall in crude oil prices on the international markets. And these are the most important things that we export and from which we earn foreign exchange to undertake development. Yeah. The minority think that, look, in spite of all of these problems, the government could have done better.
Exactly so. I would come to that bit of the stance of the minority. But my argument from the beginning had to do with the fact that if you actually start losing grips on your traditional sources of income supply, then you have a problem. That is basically the argument I'm trying to make. On the other side of the equation is the expenditure pattern. That is where I think the minority is coming from, where you have increased expenditure but don't see much work on the ground. That is actually their concern currently. As to whether that is the case or not, I mean, I cannot sit here to really tell that story. But the issue is that we do have, as a matter of fact, per the recent or the last week's Bank of Ghana Central Bank statement, now our debt to GDP ratio is over 70%. That is a fact as we speak. Okay. Initially, there was this banter between as to whether it is 62, we've crossed the unsustainable levels and all that. Now, I think the central bank...
The president himself granted one radio station in Kumasi an interview in which he said that the debt to GDP ratio is certainly not 70%. It's not crossed the 70% mark.
This week, I remember very well, I think the central bank made a statement to that effect. I stand to be corrected though, but now it is 70. It is above beyond 70%.
When we say debt to GDP ratio is 70% or above 70% or is 62%, what is debt to GDP ratio? Why should anybody be worried about debt to GDP ratio?
It's simply the case that the total capacity of our country's productive...
John, you're speaking a lot of big English that
right?
my viewers even I have difficulty
okay, let's say the value of our economy, okay, in Ghana today, if you take the value of the economy in Ghana today, 70% of it
is in debt.
Is in debt or goes into what expenditure. Okay. The point is, it becomes worrying if there is nothing to show for that money spent. But if there is, then you can go as high as even 100%. It wouldn't be any problem.
But we have a lot of things to shoot, don't we? We have roads, we have water projects, and the finance minister alluded to water projects, educational facilities. In fact, he actually said that some money has been raised for purposes of the free senior high school system that the president is introducing, I mean, the community day schools. He says that 123 of those school projects have been awarded to on contract. In fact, the president has started commissioning some of them.
These are social interventions. Social interventions don't pay costs. Okay? They don't pay for loans. They are social, they will remain social interventions. The drinking waters, the schools, the hospitals and all. Okay? They are subsidized infrastructure facilities. I'm looking at the areas like our roads. Now, when we actually go borrow money, and you construct a road, it must be towed so the road can actually take care of itself.
Which is what government says is going to do.
Exactly. So it's all part of this particular arrangement. It's all part of it. So if you have dwindling revenue sources and your expenditure keeps increasing, the best you can do as a country is to ensure that your expenditure pays for itself. In other words, you should invest in productive ventures that can actually take care of itself.
Which is what Setepe calls smart borrowing.
Smart borrowing, they call it. Some other people have different names of calling it. As to whether it is smart or not, I don't really want to get in there, basically.
Let's pick Dr. Bawumia's sound. Maybe Dr. Bawumia may have an answer to whether this is really smart borrowing. And Dr. Bawumia is a vice presidential candidate of the opposition New Patriotic Party. He's a former deputy governor of the Bank of Ghana. Let's listen to him.
Happy that we found oil, but the borrowing of this government, the reckless borrowing of this government, has compromised the whole oil discovery. 6 times, you need 6 times of our oil revenue just to pay interest, not even capital. It's interest on the debt. So it is a really sad development. I mean, what fundamental issues that affect this economy have been addressed in this budget? You should ask yourself, what fundamental issues? If we had spent, the monies borrowed, and that money borrowed is the equivalent of some $37 billion over 7 years. Now, can you imagine what $37 billion can do in an economy? $37 billion. I mean, it's amazing transformation that you can see.
The investment the government is talking about. They are going to add about 800 megawatts of power.
But we are talking about a record. You can always talk. We are going to do this. The question is, what have you done? You've had 7 years in government. What have you done? I mean, your record should speak for itself. You shouldn't be waiting for the 8th year. The IMF, they can point to even a lot. Oh, yes.
They will point to the Ridge Hospital. They will point to
when the Kufuor administration was there, with such meager resources, so much can be pointed to as well. Infrastructure, as John Mahama says, if you point to infrastructure, you are engaging in an exercise of mediocrity. But the IMF managing director put the nail on the head when they said that the borrowing done by this government has been used for consumption. It's not me saying it. It's been used for consumption and not for investment. This is the IMF's assessment. And if you look at the data that supports what she's saying, the infrastructure to GDP ratio has come down from 9.1% when the President Kufuor was in office to 4.8% today. Infrastructure. You've borrowed so much, but you are reducing your investment in infrastructure. So they can try to hoodwink us with pictures of development all over the place. But the reality is that they should have been doing twice as much. They've had 10 times as much resources as the MPP government had, 10 times as much in nominal terms.
So what is the MPP alternative? I mean,
the MPP alternative is going to be it's a very major alternative that is going to be unveiled on Thursday when we address
but
you.
Can speak to that
I don't want to. Of course I can, but I want to leave that to breathe. But we are going to build a new economy, a different economy, and you will be hearing a little bit more because you cannot just criticize without providing alternatives. And we are going to, and we have anyway.
You can tell us something as to what exactly.
I'm telling you, it's an exciting. I will tell you what it is not. It is not a doomsday economy. It is not a dead goat economy. It is not a friends and family economy, right? It is an economy that will create jobs.
You're welcome back. You just heard Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, the MPP's vice presidential candidate. Understand we have the chairman of Parliament's Finance Committee, Mr. James Aveji, on the line. Mr. Aveji, if you can hear me, good evening and welcome to PM Express.
Good evening and good evening to your listeners.
Great. We are excited to have you here join our discussion. If you heard Dr. Bawumia in his rather fired up presentation there in Parliament, he makes the point that government has monumentally failed. Do you share his view? You certainly disagree.
No, I don't. You realize that Dr. Bawumia was strategically put there today to play a role. So you saw him at the gallery of the chamber, and he was directly facing me, and I was watching him. And I've noticed all his reactions as the budget statement presentation of in progress. Now, it is not surprising that MPP, which is struggling to come back to power, should describe the budget the way they did. If they don't criticize the budget, then they don't have any story to tell Ghanaians. Come 2016. So definitely and naturally, somebody who is looking for power will definitely rubbish something, whether it's good or bad. Everything is done for them. So for me, it's not. So I don't agree with him. You need to read the entire budget document. You need to put the statement that has been read by the minister together, and then look at it critically and see whether there's something in it for us as a country or not. As an accountant, what I look at basically is the two sides of the fiscal table, which is the revenue and then the expenditure. Our problem over the years has been the budget deficit, where our needs far outweigh the revenue that we can generate. So what I look at critically is that what is the focus of the budget? What measures the minister is proposing to put in place to ensure that we can bring the gap between the revenue and the expenditure. And for me, I am satisfied because, Ghana have a program with IMF. And as the objective of this program is to stabilize the economy and grow the economy. And we can only do this if you're able to bring down the deficit or bridge the deficit gap. And that is what the budget is talking about. So, yes, for this year, we're going to get about 7.1% budget deficit, and that has been programmed to reduce over the years to about 5.3% next year. So you see that the efforts that are being made in this budget to ensure that we do that. And these are being done, the minister said, two main strategies. Measures could be put in place to streamline our revenue collection in order to mobilize more domestic revenue. Measures put in place to contain costs so that we don't have escalation of costs in order to widen the gap between the revenue and the expenditure.
But Mr. Aveji,
what we have to analyze.
It's well and good to have projections and to project to raise more revenue and to rein in expenditure. But if we have borrowing and we have been told time and again that our borrowing is unsustainable, now our debt to GDP ratio is more than 70% according to Bank of Ghana figures, that should worry anyone, shouldn't it? In fact, Dr. Bawumia points out that we need about 6 times of our total oil revenue to be able to make interest payments alone. This certainly cannot be sustainable.
Sure, it cannot be sustainable. But for us, why do we make too much noise about the debt GDP ratio? Why do we make that too much noise about that?
It's because of our ability to pay.
Yes, I can give you countries that have debt to GDP ratios which are far higher than that of Ghana.
But their circumstance may be different.
Yes, that is the point. Exactly, you are coming to that point. So it is not a matter of saying that our debt to GDP ratio is 70%. So we should be alarmed. What should be our concern is that the the debt that we are showing, to which direction are we just going?
And the concern is...
Are they going to sectors that will pay for itself or that will propel growth? If you borrow and pay salary, that is dangerous. But if you borrow and build roads that can promote economic activity, that is better.
But it is even more dangerous when you are borrowing and paying debts. Because the last Eurobond that we took, the 1 billion, if I heard the finance minister right, he was saying that about 600 million of that money was going to pay debts. So you are borrowing to pay debts, you are not borrowing to engage, undertake any capital expenditure that may refinance the loan, as Mr. Tepe often touts.
No, you have gotten it wrong. You have gotten it wrong completely. What was done was restructuring of the debt. You have a debt that is due. You go for a debt to extend the maturity date of that debt. You are not adding to the debt stock, but you are replacing a debt that is currently due for repayment. So it's about extending the maturity date of the debt, which is a prudent economic management. If you don't have money now to pay for what you have borrowed, which is due for payment, what do? Now you go for external debt to pay domestic debt, which has a higher interest rate with a lower interest rate, which is a foreign debt or external debt, but a longer tenure. So that is the issue. If we are adding to the debt stock, that should be the concern. And that addition to the debt stock, the concern should be that it should go to sectors that can propel growth of the economy. That is the point I'm making.
Mr. Aveji, help me. How do you explain to your constituent, and you are a member of parliament, that government takes 1 billion and uses part of that 1 billion to retire domestic debt? And how do you explain to your constituent that that does not add to the debt?
It doesn't.
How?
Let me explain to you. The domestic debt that is being replaced, if it is paid, is it still there?
It is not.
No more there. It is no more there. So you are taking debt to replace this debt. Doesn't mean that you are adding to the debt stock. The debt stock remains at the same level. But you have achieved two things. One, you'll be able to replace that domestic debt, which has higher interest rate, with a foreign debt with a lower interest rate.
And we were told that we actually took the... Yes, I'm listening to you.
And two, you have extended the maturity of the debt. So it has given you breathing space.
And we were told...
To the debt stock.
We were told that that 1 billion that we took it at 10.74 or 10.71%, which...
No, 10.75.
10.75%, which kind of was the highest in our league, because at that time there were other African countries that also took Eurobonds at lower rates. Why was our case different?
Give me one country that took it at a lower rate.
We read that Burkina Faso, I think, Burkina Faso took it at 6%, and we took at 10.75.
I don't believe what you are saying. During the time that Ghana went to the market, the condition in the market would not allow Ghana to take it at that point. In fact, we have been able to take these bonds at a longer maturity.
That was because of our own peculiarities, Mr. Aveji, wasn't it?
No. Investors will not be willing to give you. They know that you cannot continue to pay or service this debt for the longer time.
But if you are offering higher rate, they will give you, wouldn't they?
No. Let me give you one example. Zambia went the market immediately after Zambia that Ghana went in, and they had 10-year tenure with 12% interest rate. And Ghana went and had 15-year tenure with 10.75. We did better than Zambia. So, Burkina Faso, what you are mentioning, I don't believe that.
Mr. Aveji, thank you very much for joining our discussion. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good night. I still have John Amaku with me. I saw John shaking his head when he listened to Dr. Bawumia and listened to Mr. Aveji. I'll go back to him to tell us why.
Well, let me tell the midline here. I heard Dr. Bawumia, and I heard is it Dr. Aveji, right?
Yes, Mr. Aveji.
Mr. Aveji. But I think what I disagree with Mr. Aveji is that Ghana created our own condition, which actually made us get the rate we got the last Eurobond market. Nobody created that condition for us.
So we paid a higher
interest rate based on the risk assessment that the global community placed on us. Okay, at the point we were going, our inflation is what? About 17%. We were ranked B- with a negative outlook by Fitch,
that's
S&P,
that's
the rating agencies. B-. You know what B- is? Let me just bring it down. B- in our local parlance, you will say probably, let's say 25%, 25 out of 100.
That's such a poor
It was
score.
a poor record.
Hold that thought. Let's take a break. When we come back, we will ask how we were downgraded and rated B-, which is virtually a junk status, and for which reason we had to pay 10.75% for the 1 billion euro bond that government obtained. Yeah, welcome back. These are some of your messages on Facebook. Eric Wondong, he says, those are your wishes. That budget doesn't offer any prospects. Those are your wishes that the budget doesn't offer any prospects, so you can make political capital out of it. Unfortunately, you ain't God. Then Tornado Real Madrid says, hope, nah. Always same old stories, read over and over again. For a moment, I thought the finance minister was reading the State of the Nation address. May God save Ghana. Eric Yezu, selfish interest people. Your kids are outside the country and you are treating us like this, dead goat and cut budget. Enyo Kuma says, sure there's hope. Augment says, our hope is in the Lord, not NDC budget. The messages are many. This one, Abugri Felix. He says, well, we live to see. Anuba Stanley, only what will, I can't read this, it's not very clear. Emmanuel Amoako, this is the last one I'm going to read. He says, I think this is a State of the Nation address. It contains no iota of passion for Ghanaians. There are many other comments, we can't pick all of them. I'll go back to John and pick John's last comment. You were disagreeing with Mr. Aveji when he said that we got a good deal, 10.75 was the good rate at which we obtained the 1 billion. You disagree. The basis of your disagreement is?
Is that number one? I told you, Fitch, S&P, and the other rating agencies had actually ranked us B- with a negative outlook.
Why?
Because we had a very high inflation rate. Our city not doing very well. A very high GDP, debt to GDP ratio at that time, about 62%, which to many was even more than that. Okay, because we had conflicting statistics in there. Okay, in whichever way you look at it, these are ratios that are unsustainable.
So we're downgraded.
Okay? We're downgraded by Fitch, and that is what investors look up to. Okay, the investor out there is not staying in Ghana. They look at some of these statistics and this data to actually price their money, and that is exactly what we got. We had no option but to take it. We went in to take 1.5 billion. We came back with 1 billion. Okay, saying that the market conditions were not ripe enough. The conditions were not good, so we took 1 billion. I think I agree in many respects. Ending.
So your last word, just one word. Will this budget do the trick if we stick to it?
Indeed, if we would want to go strictly according to what the minister said in the budget, okay, that is improving monetary and financial policy management and all these things. If we should actually strictly go according to it and go by the prescriptions of the IMF, it's going to be hard, but I'm sure in the short to medium term, we can turn things around, minimize our debt, and probably start thinking of growth, say in 3-4 years to come.
Thank you very much. That's John Amwakuma, colleague on Joy Business. My name is Malik Abbas Dabo. I have been your host for PM Express tonight, and we have been discussing the budget. You heard Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia of the NPP. You heard James Aveji of the NDC. You heard all those other persons on PM Express discussing the budget. Tomorrow, God willing, we will bring you. Okay, this is Friday, and yes, we did personality profile with a fabulous young lady, which we were supposed to play today. We will bring you that next week, Friday. It's a fabulous discussion. You don't want to miss it. Thank you very much. Good night. Good night. Good night.